All right, so this is Moorish Paradigm, Book 13 by Hakeem Bey. Prophet Nobuju Ali. We, descendants of the lords of planet Earth, had descended into the gross materialism and cardinal gratification. Because of this, we began to lose the glow of our once noble nature, and our lower self got the upper hand. This ultimately led to our decline and defeat at the hands of the Roman Catholic Church in 1492. Although we have had some shining moments, since 1492, we have generally fallen as a race. Not so much because of our Father, God Allah, had punished us, but because we reaped what our own hands had sown. Thus, certain prophecies in the possession of the Moors began to take on a greater significance and importance. Below is an example of these prophecies that existed among the Moors around the time when we were forced to become Christians, known as Moriscos. It was said that eventually our situation would get so bad that even the angels will become vexed. So now this piece in this square, which is a reference from literature, piece of literature called Islam in the West, Moriscos by Anwar G. Chijing, page 27 of that literature is what I'm about to read. The third prophecy is attributed to Muhammad himself and may have formed the basis of other prophecies. It is related that Muhammad was asked about the end of the world and what would happen thereafter to his community. Muhammad replied that the world will come to an end when the most perverse and most worst people appear at a time when a part of his community will still be in an island situated in the extreme west, which is called Al-Andalusia. I'm just going to run that back because that was fire. It is related that Muhammad was asked about the end of the world and what will happen thereafter to his community. Muhammad replied that the world will come to an end when the most perverse and worst people appear at a time when a part of his community will still be on an island situated in the extreme west, which is called Andalusia. The people of his community will be the last of its inhabitants. All calamities will befall them because of their neglect of the religious law and their worldliness, neglecting prayers and indulging in luxury. The minors among them do not respect the elderly, nor do the elderly have compassion for the minors. Injustices and false oaths abound among them. Merchants purchase and sell with usury, which is tax, and deceit, and covet properties. These and other evil things will become manifest, and God will subject them to people worse than they. They will be tormented. Cruel governors will rule over them. Their property will be confiscated for no reason. They will be captive and subject to killing and conversion, and will worship images of idols. They will be obligated to eat bacon and will endure other oppressions to the point of hopelessness and despair. God will punish their sins, but he will also have pity on them and forgive them when those evils are eradicated, meaning they change their ways, and when they return to the practice of the religious law. The cruelty imposed will be so intense that the angels will become vexed and will appear before Almighty, calling to his attention to their plight. It is then that God, the Avenger, will send someone to rescue them from their miserable condition. This will take place when the new year falls on a Saturday. God will then send a sign consisting of a cloud of birds, two of which will represent the angels Gabriel and Michael. The first cloud of birds will be followed by the other birds on the earth to announce the coming of the King of the West and East, who will take Al-Andalusia. The conflict between Islam and Christianity will end with a return to the law of the Moors. There will be much cloud in that year, scarcity of water, trees bearing extra fruits, and other signs. So once again, that was a quote from Islam and the West, Moriscos by Anwar G. Chajin, page 27. Since 1492, we have suffered defeat, chattel slavery, lynchings, killings, poverty, ignorance, and everything degrading and destructive to a people, even to the point of hopelessness and despair. Thus, the next logical question would be, when will the great God Allah send this someone to rescue us from our miserable condition? When will this King of East and West come and bring about a return to the law of the Moors? A prophet among us. That question was asked in March 1917 in an editorial in the Champion magazine, a so-called Negro publication. The editorial said, quote, "The Negro is crying for a Muhammad to come forth and give him the Quran of economic and intellectual welfare. Where is he?" This was the prayer of our people, and Allah responded by sending us someone, a king of the East and the West, a Muhammad, a prophet who would bring us a Quran of economic and intellectual welfare. That one sent to us was none other than Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Prophet Noble Drew Ali was born Timothy Drew in North Carolina, January 8th, 1886. As can be seen, he was a prophet from among us, homegrown and not a foreigner, speaking a foreign language. Not much is known about his early life prior to becoming a prophet of Allah. All we have is what has been handed down to us by the Moorish elders. The elders said the prophet founded the first temple in Newark, New Jersey in 1913. It was during this time, between 1913 through 1916, and just prior, that the prophet was said to have learned Islam and the truth about our Moorish heritage. It was also during this time that he was said to have been put through the test of the prophethood and to have received the title Ali. During this time, he was recognized as the prophet and the one representing our people among the nations of the world. In 1916, he founded the Moorish Divine and National Movement. Between 1916 and 1919, he stayed with the original Canaanite temple, but a foreign Islamic teacher came in and began to discredit the prophet as not teaching true Islam and for not teaching Arabic. This struggle ultimately divided the membership, and the prophet went to New York City to link up with Marcus Garvey's UNIA movement Marcus Garvey is said to be the John the Baptist of the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. He came to prepare the descendants of Amexem, original name of Africa, see the Quran, for the Prophet's coming. Around the circles of the Garvey movement, the Prophet was known as the Prince and Professor Drew and the Egyptian adept. He began to have an influence on Garvey's UNIA movement, Hebrew movements, and other movements among our people. His influence in the UNIA can be seen in the quotes below. Quote, Garvey once said, Muhammad suffered many defeats at certain times. He said, but Muhammad stuck to his faith and ultimately triumphed the Mohammedanism, and Mohammedanism was given to the world. And as Muhammad did in the religious world, so in the political arena, we have had men who had paid the price for leading the people towards the great light of liberty, unquote. That was page 88 of the Universal Ethiopian Hymnal by Arnold J. Ford. Quote, Arnold Josiah Ford, the musical director of the UNIA, utilized the symbols of Islam in several of his musical compositions for the organization. Allahu Akbar was the title of one of his hymns. Other pieces made similar references. Quote, may our rights proclaim in the most sacred name of Allah, one God, one aim, one destiny. Note, many people are familiar with the phrase one God, one aim, one destiny, but very few know that it was preceded with may our rights proclaim in that most sacred name, Allah. Father of all creation, Allah omnipotent, supreme, or every nation. From murderous Cain, whose vengeful mood, a doctrine cursed, preferred to spill or drink his brother's blood, when love is in Allah's word. Page 88. All these are, so this is a quote from this book. Whenever you see that page from now on in this section, just know it's quoting from a book called The Universal European Hymnal by Arnold J. Ford. Quote, as leader of the Black Jewish movement in the 1920s, Ford was particularly sensitive to the issue of signification and alternative religious identities in the UNIA. By 1924, Arnold Ford was the rabbi of the Black Jewish congregation Beth B'nai Abraham in Harlem. 1924. Black Jewish, that's interesting, congregation. So as we read earlier, Noble Drew Ali had influence on all these little groups and united them. We've also learned that what somewhat stopped his momentum was that he wasn't teaching the people Arabic, because he was getting a lot of people, foreigners coming over here saying, you don't know Arabic? And it was causing a little something, right? Then he linked up with Garvey. Went to jail, as we know, and he inherited all his followers. All right, so let's continue. Somewhere between 1919 and 1925, Prophet Noble Drew Ali returned to the South and to North Carolina, where he was born, It was during this time that Allah spoke to Noble Drew Ali and ordained him the prophet. Allah instructed him to go west to Chicago, announce his prophethood, and begin his mission. It was also in December of 1925 that the crescent moon and star was seen hanging low in the western skies, heralding the coming of the prophet, the return of the Mahdi, who would establish a new caliphate, divine government here in the West, in fulfillment of the prophecies of Islam. Thus, it is no coincidence that in 1925, within a year after the decaying of the Islamic Caliphate in Turkey was taken down in the East in 1924, Allah ordained a new prophet, and thus the beginning of a new caliphate here in the West. Whoever's not familiar with caliphate, go ahead and look that up. I'm talking about government structure. Caliphs. Queen Khalifa, right? That's, once again, any ancient language, there's a male and feminine. So Khalifa is just the emperor's holding that position. A male would be a caliph, right? Khalifa. That's a position, and they were elected. We're talking about a seat, a position. So it must be in an organized government. The prophecies of the Mahdi. Muhammad al-Khatun al-Ibiyah has said, quote, the sun will rise from the place of its setting. Abdullah ibn Amir reported, I heard the messenger of Allah say, quote, the first of the signs that will come out will be the rising of the sun in its place of setting, and the coming out of the beast to the people at forenoon. And whichever of these two comes to pass before its companion, the other will be near its footsteps. That was a quote from Mishkat ul-Masbi, volume 4, page 53. Thus, as the Muslims in the East are even to this day awaiting the Mahdi, little do they realize that he has already come. He has come from a rejected and despised people who they would never have thought would produce their long-awaited Mahdi. The same way they, quote unquote, the Arabs, were seen when the Prophet Muhammad came from among them. Thus, we are now the portion of the Asiatic family from whom the last prophet has come. Quote, but no, I swear by the Lord of the regions of the East and the West that we can certainly replace them with those better than them, and we cannot be defeated. That was a quote from the Quran with the Q, which is, as we talked about on the Sunday classes, Surah, Arabic, or essentially English version of chapter. So that's a quote from the Quran with the Q. Another quote from the Quran with the Q. And verily, we have raised in every nation a Rasul, or messenger, proclaiming, serve Allah, and shun Tagat, or all false deities. Of the people were some who Allah guided, and some on whom error came inevitably established. So travel through the earth and see what was the end of those who denied the truth. This is a quote from the Quran with the Q, Al-Quran Surah, Ayat. I mean, well, I guess that's like book, chapter and verse. So Ayat. This is the reason why the Arabs and many of the current Muslims of the East have and will oppose us as we rise. It is in the very prophecies of which they themselves hold in their hands. And that's interesting because through my travels, like I say, the last 5 years of just being woke, going through public Fez turban, I've, ran across a couple quote unquote Middle Easterns in the East, and it was like, the same type of deal like we just read. Oh, you don't know Arabic? Or so it's interesting that Noble Drew Ali had those type of run-ins in his time, and it's still going on now. So, that's why we're learning things for unification purposes. Once again, going through the Quran with the Q, bridging the gap for our brothers I prescribed, being Muslim and just unifying, It's even important to know Arabic. I wouldn't say necessarily just to, be accepted by, the Pale Arab, but on a tip of negotiation, trade, diplomacy. Because on another front, like I said, the Prophet had interpreters, in the fold of the Moorish Science Simple. Interpreters, people that can speak Arabic, Moorish, Latin. So, everybody don't got to learn it, but, we need a couple people in the body that know for, spread the political agenda and expansion purposes. When the Quran rises, he will face so much difficulty from the people that even An-Nabi during the period of Jahiliyyah or ignorance did not face. When An-Nabi was appointed, people worship stones and wood. However, when our Qaim arise, people will interpret the ordinances of Allah against the interpretation and will argue with him and dispute by means of the Quran. By Allah, the justice of the Qaim will enter inside their homes, just as the heat and the cold enter them. So, his quotes, the things that he's interjecting, these books, his references that he's using to support, keep in mind how he, any book actually, but he's doing it more pronounced for people that may want to write books in the future. A certain type of structure. I know everybody, I don't know everybody, if they went to high school, graduated or whatever, but I know when I was in high school, you had formats, APA, MLS, and it's essentially an essay style, certain ways that you incorporate your references to sustain the point that you're making, because you're going to have a written body of work. You're going to have a position, and then you're going to go in on why you have the position you have. And then you make that public for the people at large to analyze that. That's the whole point of having literature, but let me not go too far off into that. This was opposition, was actually fulfilled by a Muslim named Sadi Majid, who was so outraged by the Prophet bringing a new Quran. He wrote the Prophet demanding that he change the name and burn the book. He even tried to get the United States government involved, but the government did not get involved and told Sati Majid to go to the men of knowledge and religion and seek redress. He then went to the Muslim scholars in Egypt to get them to pronounce a fatwa against the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, which they did. They also, however, spoke against Sadi Majid and his qualifications. It was said in the prophecies that the Muslims in the East have that the Mahdi will invite to a new mission or movement, a new tradition, a new method. Yet they will rebel against that which they themselves know. Here's a reference from the Al-Dif al-Imam al-Mahdi, volume 3, page 183, to support what he's saying. Quote, he appears with a new method, new principles, and new judgment. He will be severe with the Arabs. Quote, when the Qayyim emerges, he will come with a new commission, a new book, a new conduct, and a new judgment, which will be strenuous for the Arabs. His work is nothing but to fight, and no one will be spared. He will not be afraid of any blame in the execution of his duty. Right, so he got a couple more quotes in there. I'm gonna get back to his literature or his narration. Truly blessed are we the strangers. There was no one else who fulfills all of these prophecies other than Noble Drew Ali. The prophet did bring us a Quran, as our people requested in the magazine article. Quote, the Negro is crying for Muhammad to come forth and give him the Quran of economic and intellectual warfare. Where is he? He fulfilled the Islamic prophecies concerning the Mahdi, as seen in the above quotes. He even fulfilled the Christian prophecies found in the books of Revelations. In the book of Revelations, notice the 7th seal in the Quran. Chapter 5, verse 1. And I saw in the right hand of him that sat on the throne of a book written within, and on the backside sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, who was worthy to open the book and to loose the seals thereof. And no man in heaven nor in earth, neither under the earth, was able to open the book, neither to look therein. And I wept much because no man was found worthy to open and to read the book, neither to look therein. And one of the elders said up unto me, weep not. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, hath prevailed to open the book and to loose the 7 seals thereof. So that was a quote from Revelations. Keep in mind, these are his cross-referencing to support his main position. Now that we have a little background on the Prophet Noble Drew Ali and his rise to prophethood, let us look at what exactly did he do to raise and save us as a nation. A divine and national movement for the uplifting of a nation. Prophet Noble Drew Ali said to the Moors, quote, I brought you everything to save a nation. Now take it and save yourself. And this is another supporting introduction that he's using. And this was a quote from the prophecies and oral statements of Prophet Noble Drew Ali. What was it that Prophet Noble Drew Ali brought to us as a nation? When he made this statement, was it said? When he made this statement, it was said that he was holding up the Quran of the MST of A and the questionnaire containing the 1928 charter and laws for the Moorish Science Temple. Pretty sure everybody's familiar with the Quran and the our authority. The prophet said he brought us everything it takes to save a nation. Well, first of all, what is a nation? And how do the above documents, Quran and Charter, play a role in saving a nation? So we're going to go into a definition from Webster's Unabridged Dictionary. Nation, noun. So we got in quotations, birth, they raise people to be born. So a stable, historically developed community of people with a territory, economic life, distinctive culture, and a language in common. The people of a territory united under a single government. So that's a nation. So it's looking like activity going on when you read the definition of the Webster's Unabridged Dictionary definition of nation. Culture is evident amongst the organization of the people. The nationality of people have historical significance. As we know, our people was known to civilize the world, humanity, taught order, everything, cosmology, 7 liberal arts, the whole 9. So we got that. That's all. We have all that. Any nationality of people has some ancient customs that they preserve, and it's distinctive. And once you organize on a territory, now you have what you call government or organization. But once all those things are checked off, a nation's intact. So let's read the Black's Law Dictionary definition of nation. A people or aggregation of men existing in the form of an organized rural society, usually inhabiting a distinct portion of the earth, speaking the same language, using same customs, possessing historic continuity, and distinguished from other like groups by their racial origin, characteristics, and generally, but not necessarily, living under the same government and sovereignty. Nationality intact, everybody on the same page. It's evident that that's culture. Everybody has turbans and fezzes, right? So that's a cultural identifier that the whole group, rural society, organized body is displaying amongst, right? So that's customs, unity. There needs to be some type of organization existing. The key things to the existence of a nation common to both of the above definitions are: 1, a race of people of common origin; 2, inhabiting a territory or portion of the earth; 3, a distinctive and common culture; 4, a common language; 5, historic existence and continuity; 6, unity under a single government. So once again, number 6, especially unity, not scattered, not bouncing around. You're part of a body. And if you in a territory, like I said, it's a big territory. North America is big. North, Central, and South America is big. how it's supposed to work is supposed to be bodies everywhere, and then a confederation will be formed. So now all the bodies are, ideally pop up in different areas, East Coast, West Coast, whatever. Eventually the next phase, when that does happen, is it's all supposed to come together anyway. So it's all one body. It all go back to one body regardless of where you at. So that's why we promote linking up. We don't care where you at. You know what I'm saying? Khalifa Society. If you're interested in information, you are more, come link up. If you ain't linked up with another body. Like I say, economically, what we can do with just a handful of people. Back to that 100 number. I'm pretty optimistic and eager to maintain 100 bodies locked in economically for 12 months after 12 months. 250,000 every 3 years in-house. If the above 6 items are key to the existence of a nation, to save a nation, you must repair or restore any of these items which that nation has lost or was destroyed. The Prophet Noble Drew Ali brought us every one of these keys to save us as a people, a nation. Our Quran brought to us by the Prophet lays out our racial and common origin. The Holy Quran also describes the metes and bounds of the territories, even to our ancestors by our Pharaoh in Egypt after the cataclysms of 1500 BC. The Prophet in the Quran, Moorish literature, writing, and oral statements taught us some of the distinctive and common aspects of Moorish civilization and culture. Established English as our modern common language. He reconnected us back to the historic legacy of our Moorish ancestors in Mecca and Morocco in the July 20 of 1928 charter. The Moorish Science Temple of America deriving its power and authority from the great Quran Muhammad. This is why he said, I have mended and broken wires and have connected them with the higher powers. By giving us our nationality of Moorish Americans, he united us under one single government. On the national side, he established us as national citizens of the national government of the United States of America, or Moorish Americans. On the divine side, he established our divine government via the divine constitution and laws of the Moorish Science Temple of America, and established a new caliphate or divine government. Divine and national government, 2 governments well involved in one. The reason the Prophet named this movement the Moorish Divine and National Movement is because it is a movement designed to restore us within our own divine government, and thence within the national government of the United States of America. By establishing our divine birthrights and government, he also established our rights as Moorish American national citizens. Thus, our movement teaches us how to function in 2 spheres of activity. The divine sphere, represented by the eye and the pyramid on the dollar bill, and the national sphere, represented by the eagle. At the head of the national government is the president, followed by the vice president. At the head of the divine side is Allah, then the Prophet Nabi, followed by the Supreme Grand Sheikh and chairman of the Moorish Science Temple, or Caliph. Divine and national relates to the separation of church and state. Thus, the 2 seals, The reason our side is called divine is because it is headed by Allah, and we have a divine constitution. The national government has a secular, mundane regnum constitution creating republican form of government. Thus, we are a nation within a nation. The Moorish Science Temple of America is a divine nation functioning within a national government structure. The purpose of the Prophet's divine and national movement was to make us a nation within this nation by restoring to us all that was taken from us. This was one of the toughest jobs and greatest feats ever to be attempted. What the Prophet did with no college education shows that he was not guided by the opinions and ideas of men, but that he was in fact divinely guided. To do this, the Prophet had to execute his plan in degrees and stages. In the Moorish leader's historical message to America, the Prophet lays out the degrees and stages he took the movement through in order to achieve his aim. We organized as the Moorish Temple of Science in the year 1925 and were legally incorporated as a civics organization under the laws of the state of Illinois, November 29th, 1926. The name Moorish Temple of Science was changed to Moorish Science Temple of America, May 1928, in accordance with the legal requirements of the Secretary of the state of Illinois. The national organization, with a Rotarian complexion as it relates to branch temples. Since the work of the Moorish Science Temple of America was largely religious, the organization has been legally changed to a religious corporation, and the affidavit to this effect has been properly filed in the Cook County Recorder's Office of Illinois. Notice how the Prophet's first step was to set up as a civics organization in 1926. However, the civics organization did not fit the category of a nation or government because it was under the Secretary of State of Illinois. Also, it would have to be a secular, non-divine government, nation or state, since it is under the classification of civics. The only way a government or state can be formed on the secular national is via the Congress and not by the Secretary of State. Thus, this civics organization formed by the Prophet did not make us yet a nation within a nation. On May of 1928, the name of the civic organization was changed to the Moorish Science Temple of America. This was only a change in name and not in the nature and function of the civics organization. It was still under the Secretary of State of Illinois. Thus, this still did not make us a nation within a nation. It was not until the next and final move made a few months later that we became a nation within a nation. Some say that the officials were already anticipating the Prophet's next move, but as creative fate would have it, they were powerless to stop him. He said that the civics organization has been legally changed to a religious corporation. This effectively pulled the organization out from under the Secretary of State of Illinois and filing not under the Secretary of State of Illinois, but instead filing an affidavit in the Cook County's Recorder's Office of Illinois. This created a form of religious corporation that is not the same as the not-for-profit 501c3 corporation set up for religious purposes, which most churches and religious bodies function under today. In Illinois, you can file under the Religious Corporation Act of 1872 or under the Not-for-Profit Corporation Act, which is under the authority of the Secretary of State of Illinois. Prophet Noble Jew Ali filed the Moorish Science Temple within RCA in order that the Moorish Science Temple can function as a divine government, a divine nation with this nation. The RCA gives religious corporations a wide discretion as to issues of government, governance, and operation. In addition to being able to incorporate under the Illinois Not-for-Profit Corporation Act of 1986, they can incorporate the Religious Corporation Act. The Religious Corporation Act of 1872 provides that any church, congregation, or society formed for the purpose of religious worship may become incorporated. In fact, the choice of law is likely to be determined by the legal counsel engaged by the religious organization. A few Illinois attorneys seem to prefer RCA because it is very simple and uncomplicated. It gives religious corporations a wide discretion as to issues of governance and operations. Whereas a corporation under Not-for-Profit Corporation Act can be shut down by the Secretary of State for not making an annual filing of reports. The religious corporation, as the Prophet Noble Jew Ali formed the Moorish Science Temple and filed as per Religious Corporation Act of 1872. The Moorish Science Temple of America cannot be touched by the Secretary of State for Illinois. He has no power or jurisdiction whatsoever over the Moorish Science Temple. All right, so I'm gonna pick it back up Friday. So we're on page 16. So I'm gonna open the floor. I would imagine it's a lot of notes I was taking because I was a lot of pages, but I feel the brother Hakeem Base, he laid a nice foundation in his composition. You know, for people that may be gray, have gray areas in this area. But yeah, open the floor. Any thoughts?
Yeah. This was it was really, really good. I believe later on he mentioned the beginning part of it was sort of relating to Revelation. So when you were reading it, that's kind of what I was getting from it. It was relating to Revelation and, you know, the Bible. However, the Bible is is very, you know, difficult to kind of understand because it talks about so many different things happening. But this part of it was very direct and to the point, so it made it easier to, you know, articulate and understand. One thing that definitely stood out to me was that, you know, the prophet did not have a college education, and then that proved that he was divinely guided. So, you know, as we grow up, it's important, you know, they say get your education, you know, this and that, but it's just like that don't really mean anything. You know what I'm saying? It's just like because we can divinely guide ourselves by being grounded, being in tune, and, you know, all those other type of things. So it kind of now put me in the mindset of not saying that getting my master's was a waste of time, but it's just like I really didn't need it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So yeah, this was really good. I can't wait to dissect more on Friday.
Yeah, it's long. And we're not even halfway through. It's like maybe a fourth.
Yeah.
Yes, there's some good stuff. Anybody else had any thoughts?
So I had wrote something down, but what she just said gave me like a download, so I kind of meshed the two together. So she was talking about the book of Revelation, and when she said that, realization is what popped into my mind. So what I had wrote previous was the archangels, Gabriel and Michael. So Gabriel controls the spiritual world and Michael controls the mental world. So we've been talking about being balanced and staying balanced and being in moderation. So once you're able to find balance within your spiritual and your mental, that's the whole revelation, the realization of your growth and your evolution. Like that's what I got from that.
Wow.
Then something else that stuck out to me was Muslims in the East have that the Mahdi will invite a new mission and will invent a new mission, a new tradition, a new method. So I feel like that's basically what's going on now. Like with all this crazy energy that's going on, by us being able to link up and talk and just expressing ourselves, we're able to like transmute that energy and create a whole new wave, a whole new vibe, so that we can push this movement to accelerate a little bit faster.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, for sure. For sure. You know, it's the culture. It's,
Right.
people just observing, especially as we expand, you know, there's people just looking at us, and you know, our character is in line with other nationalities of people. After a while, it's just like, oh man, it's just, you know, I read so much about you. You know, I mean, people I've been that's just now catching up to that Martin movie, where they call him Moore. All throughout the movie, go back in time and all that.
Oh, the night, something like
With
that.
the Black Knight or
The
something
Black
The
Knight,
Black
yeah.
Knight, yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's starting to become more of a thing. Like people, oh yeah, 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 and they've been seeing the movie. It's just more
But
about
in that movie too, the way he was doing it, the nigga was doing it disrespectful too. Like he
Right.
knew what the fuck he was doing.
that part. Yeah, that's the only disheartening thing that they do. Knowing these traders, man, they accept that dangling of the carrot, that
Right.
lifestyle that they don't want to give up. But they, you know, a lot of people know the truth. But it's still enough in that movie where, you know, common people was like, oh yeah, the Moor, you know, it's becoming more of a thing. And I like it because, you know, the COINTELPRO and all that, they can't discredit no more. It's like Moorish is an ideology. Like, no, it's actually national, you know, we very illustrious history. You know what I mean? And
You could pull up receipts. You got facts to back up everything you talking about. How can you say some bullshit?
right. That's what I was. That's the part I'm loving. Like the facts are starting to come out, even as, you know, Kyrie and all that Kanye thing is bringing more light to what is really supposed to be shed light on. You know, our people gotta crawl before they walk anyway. But I see the unfolding happening though. Yeah. Any other thoughts, or you got anything else that you still got?
I got a whole page full of stuff. I don't want to take up the whole floor though.
Yeah, let's see if somebody else got something to say. Nah, shit, just run through it though. If nobody else got nothing they want to add.
Yeah, so what stood out, one thing that stood out was the RCA versus the non-for-profit. That seemed to be a big key to like not getting shut down or getting any roadblocks. You know, that's what made it more sovereign right there. You know, a lot of people would think that we are, as soon as you say religious, they're gonna think not-for-profit already. They don't even know about this, a lot of people, I'm pretty sure.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It was something else we went over 2 Sundays ago. That talks about you can organize as an organization, and as long as the elements have religion, culture, civics. It qualifies for like being looked at as a non-taxed organization, basically.
Mm-hmm.
It's on the same type of tip. Matter of fact, I'm gonna throw in the chat because I did a piece on this, what he's talking about, but in depth. It's an actual law in Illinois that the prophet utilized, and essentially he kept it a civics organization. Like when you read that laws, it basically says you can have a civics organization and you can change the name, so it can, you know, have a religious overtone, you know. But when they look at the meat and potatoes, or quote unquote, or the bylaws of the organization, you'll see it's still a civics organization. And he was a genius for that, to get that on the record. Because you see, he didn't deal with the state of Illinois, he dealt with the county, Cook County, which if anybody know any background on, you know, counties and sheriffs, that would be a de jure common law act, getting stuff on the record, versus a municipality, you know. So even though everybody's corrupt, but in principle, especially back then, you're dealing with sheriffs and counties versus chief of police and municipality.
Mm-hmm.
The sheriff and county will be lawful. They're supposed to be upholding the Constitution. Municipalities is dealing with in-house internal affairs. So no, if you're not on the board, if you're not board members of the city of Anaheim, municipal corporation, then that had nothing to do with you, right? That's kind of how that works. Hopefully, I explained that pretty well. But yeah, man.
Also, language seems to be a big thing. You brought it up earlier, but I feel like as far as even letting nations know that we respect their cultures, that we're willing to step outside of our own bubble to learn their languages, to be able to communicate with them instead of them having to learn ours always, you know, the other way around. And then it also just shows the nobility, it shows the brain power, shows the diverse, you know, that we have diverse ability, you know, like we can transform, you know, into, we're not just one thing or one color or, you know, all those things.
Yeah.
So yeah, language, I'm working on that too, like Arabic, Latin, Hebrew, those, I feel like those will get us into the biggest groups.
Yeah.
Everybody else knows English already, you know, like, but, and as far as like our history, magic itself, all those, it seems like those languages seem to come from the ether the closest, you know?
Right. Yeah, man. A lot of people don't know that. Like, you know, Noble Drew Ali had multiple interpreters. A lot of people don't really grasp the fact that he attended and was a member and ambassador at the Pan American Conference, Inter-American Pan American Conference in Cuba. I don't think people grasp like what that conference was about. What's the point of that conference? Like, what is a Pan American Conference? But the Pan American Conference, this is before what they call the Organization of American States, which chartered the Inter-American Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. Before that was existing, it was the Pan American, you know, the platform he was at in Cuba, and different American states, like, you know, Cubans, Belizeans, people from Ecuador, you know, Mexico. It was like true American states. They'll come and have a panel discussion about how, you know, protecting the rights of the indigenous people and things we can do as allies, you know, as a unified front. So Noble Drew Ali had a seat at that. So he was a representative. Because remember, that's why he organized. For one, it was a civics organization, so it was a nation state. Divine the national political side. So when he formed the temple, when he reorganized the religious, as you can see, he just did it for filing purposes, but it was still a state, American state. So he was representing the Moors in North America at a seat in the conference. Who was next to him? Like I say, you might got the ambassador for Belize. You might got the ambassador for Ecuador. You might got the ambassador for Chile. You might got the ambassador for Peru. These were all true Americans at the seat. Noble Drew Ali was at the seat saying, look, we woke out here, we organized body. He was at the table. No other Black leader ever is on record doing nothing like that. Because for one, Black is not a nationality, so you can't be an ambassador of Black. So I'm just saying that because the gravity of what he did was unmatched. You know, so I just wanted to throw that out there.
Appreciate it. Big facts, big facts.
Did anybody else have any thoughts?
This is the book, Moorish Paradigm.
Yeah, and it's a series. This is book 13.
Oh shoot! So it starts at 1.
Yep.
Dang. Yeah, this is pretty powerful. I think the fact that he was able to sneak through loopholes makes it such a divine movement, because you know it's survived all the way till now. And I was the last meeting, I think Blaze was talking about how storing food for 90 days. I didn't really quite understand what he meant by that, but I saw that it was one of the predictions that Noble Drew Ali made. So, you know, I'm starting to find a lot of things that's pretty bone chilling. Like, dang, I got to start preparing too then.
Yeah.
Because, you know, a lot of the prophecies that he made, they're all coming to pass. So it's pretty deep.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, that's why it's important to strive to get land as a body, because, you know, in these days, the only reason why one will be stocking up for food if one is dependent on the grocery store. But if a community is not dependent on the grocery store, it ain't really like stacking up. I mean, you're gonna do that naturally. I mean, growing fruit, might preserve it in some glass jars or whatnot, or just on GP. So, but it's the mind state we're trying to get our people to start having. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that land over there in Warner Springs is still available. You know, hopefully, I seen another one down the street from it too. But I also seen that wild rice. It's on Dr. Sebi's list. I've had some sitting around for a minute, and I don't like throwing food away. So I looked up what the shelf life on that is. It says if it's not cooked in an airtight container, it could last for up to 10 years. So just throwing that out there. Wild rice is hella nutritious too.
That's good stuff right there. Yeah. Anybody else? Any other thoughts? No one else had any thoughts. Yeah, go through your list, Phoenix. You got some more things.
For the most part, it was like basic key points. So I have Morisco equals Christians. God will subject them to the people worse than they. Like that hit a little different because I actually see that playing out in situations that are around me right now. I read that one. And then I found it very interesting that Noble Drew Ali was able to fulfill both the Islamic prophecies and then the prophecies from the book of Revelations, which to me stood out because he was balanced within his own energies, that he could manipulate whatever that they threw at him, because I already know that the test be a little tricky sometimes. I bought you everything to save a nation. Now take it and save yourself. I took that as actually doing your shadow work, healing your energy so that you're able to become balanced and whole within yourself. The whole divine sphere and eye of the pyramid equals the divine constitution, and then the national sphere and the eagle is the secular constitution. Like, I need to go into that a little bit more in detail because that was my first time ever hearing that. So I went ahead and jotted that down. And that's pretty much it. All of the other stuff was like basic, like the dates and stuff that you went over and the day he was born, where he was born and stuff like that.
Okay. You see how that goes? It coincides with the Sunday piece with the Quran and the character. I mean, not the character, but remember how they said the Israelites got taken over by the Moabites?
Yeah, because they weren't operating in their proper mindset. They was outside doing fuck shit.
Yeah, idol worshiping,
Yeah.
human ways. So that's in line with this because every time it's a nation that's stiff-necked, rebellious, and their carnal self, historically, they were allowed to get conquered by an intact government.
So I have seen a video not too long ago. I believe the name of the book was like The Dragon and the Phoenix or something like that. But they were explaining how the higher vibrational Moors were called the phoenixes, and then the lower vibrational Moors were called the dragons. And then, so when you look at it, the dragon is your lower self, your lower chakras, and then the phoenix is your higher self, your higher chakras. So the way that he had explained the book, it was basically how the phoenix Moors were able to dominate the dragons because they were operating from their lower chakras and not their higher self. So it's like all of these stories, they're from different religions, from different cultures, but they all like tie into the same thing.
Exactly. And remember, we also plugged in that book, A Lot of Egypt. And
yeah, that book is dope. I gotta get that.
Yeah, it was talking about mortality versus immortality.
Mm-hmm.
And, lower self activity, you're considered immortal, and immortal will be,
higher self.
Yeah. Yep. So, and like I say, I have like, damn, the whole video game Mortal Kombat, it stuck out to me. Like I was telling you, like really what that mean. Mortal Kombat, you fighting the lower self. It's always a fight.
Mm-hmm. And then dragon is the kundalini, like the kundalini rising up the spine. So yeah, everything is they really put everything in our face with symbolism. Once we learn all of the fucking symbolism, it's a wrap. Like,
right. Yeah. Yeah. Any other thoughts before we close out? And before we close out too, just keep a heads up. If anybody can keep an eye out or send me some links to a little oven. So when we feed the homeless, it's gonna be like 2 pots. I want to be able to sit it on something to keep it warm, or flat, whatever those things are called. If anybody could just send me some links on a couple of those things. We'll be feeding the homeless pretty soon here on a schedule of every first of the month. And yeah, even any ideas for what to bring, like I said, my idea was chili, styrofoam cups, spoons, fork, loaf of bread, napkins, maybe some bottled water. Outside of that, yeah, everybody have a beautiful night. If nobody has any other thoughts, I'll see everybody on the holy day.
peace.
Islam, peace and love.
Islam or
Yeah.
Islam, man. We'll
Peace
speak
and
to love,
love.
man. Have a blissful evening. Peace and love. Islam.
Islam.
Islam.